highest paid entertainer in the world is Oprah Winfrey, an African American. The highest paid sports figure, Tiger Woods, made $120 million last year, African American. Hardly seems to me that it's hard for African Americans to break through the glass ceiling anymore. To say that people who are unhappy with the policies of this White House are racist is an insult to the president, as well as an insult to the people who happen to believe that in America you can disagree with the policies of someone without calling into issue their color. It is the ultimate defying of the dream that Martin Luther King spoke here of in this city in August of 1963 when he said, "I hope the day comes when we'll be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin." And the reality is, if we have people who are now only wanting to talk about the president's race and not his policies, then we're not the ones who are having the issue with race. It's the people who keep bringing it up. This is about policy. This is about whether or not government ought to be bigger or smaller, whether taxes ought to be higher or lower. This is about whether the United States ought to capitulate to the Russians and the Iranians and the Venezuelans, or whether we should be stronger and hold a more tough line against nations of tyranny. That's what this is about. It has nothing to do with the content. And personally, let me just say how offended I am whenever this idea of race. I grew up in the deep South, South Arkansas, with Jim Crow laws around me. 25 years ago, when I was a pastor of a church in a very racially divided city, I was the pastor who brought in the first African-American member to what had been for 100 years an all-white church and had death threats over it. And I stood before that congregation and I said, if this young man cannot be a part of this church, then neither will I. Make up your mind. And it was a very important moment in the life of that church. It was a breakthrough. And for me personally, who appointed the first African-American Attorney General in my state when there was a brief vacancy, who had more African-Americans in my cabinet than did, and in my staff, than even Bill Clinton and Jim Guy Tucker did, who got 48% of the African-American vote as a Republican, which is unheard of. I'm especially and personally offended when the issue of race is that if you happen to question the policies of the president, that somehow that's race-related. I think no one can look at my record, not just as a politician, but as a human being, and find a shred of racism there. So I take affront when former President Carter tries to make this the issue. Now, do we still have racism in America? Yeah, of course we do. Let's not kid ourselves. But that's not what this discussion over health care or over foreign policy is all about. That's what I think we've got to be clear.
We got time for one more question.
Okay.